Spaced out there. It's 12:22. Let's get high. You know, the common knowledge is if you do these things more frequently, these broadcasts, more people will come. Mine seems to be going the other direction. So maybe I'm doing them too often. So maybe I might cut back somewhat. And I was hoping, because I published a book in September of 2000. Yeah. And then I wrote another book. And the book I wrote in September is called Sex, A Metaphor to History, Trump 77 and the 1,000 Years of Woman. And I haven't really sold any. But I'd write this other book because these two books, like, they came out of heaven. They were just, they're really like, they're just, I love these books. I love all my books, but I love these books. The second one, the one I'm writing and I got one I'm going to publish the 17th of August. And the 17th of August is, in the Hebrew calendar, when I was born here in LA, on August 28th, 1944, in the Hebrew calendar, it was the 9th of Elul. Elul is the last month before, last month of this 6th month of the feminine part of the year, before starting the 6 months of the the male part of the year. And so I'll turn 77 on that day, which I thought would be a good time to publish it, rather than just publish it whenever. And also because one of the books, one of the big links in my opening up the book Zohar, which that's the second book, Zohar, Brilliance Beyond the Black Hole, was facilitated by a set of books called Pri Tzedek, Righteous Fruit, that was published on the day that I was born. And the reason it was published then is the man who had wrote it, Sadhu HaKohen. So he had passed away on that day some decades before, 2-3 decades before. And he was a very, I know a little bit about him. One of the things known about him is that he married a woman who didn't want to have children. It was very unusual in those days, and particularly to marry, a great thinker like Sadhu HaKohen. And he tried for a very long time to get the rabbis to find some sort of way that he could divorce her, but whatever the difficulty was, they couldn't. He lived his whole life. He never had children. And at the end of the life, the Rebbe that he followed passed away, and they made him Rebbe. And so for a few years, he was Rebbe before he passed away. And the things that he writes are like, just, this man having suffered a lot in his life, particularly living in communities where that's the big thing. Everyone has children, and certainly someone who's brilliant, you expect to have brilliant children. And not to have any children, particularly because the wife was making him problems. So certainly this man suffered. Yet his writings, there's something like so sweet about them, so kind and gentle. I mean, it's not so much, I mean, they're very Talmudic, very deep things, but just the way that he writes and the way that he looks at things and the way that he deciphers the Zohar really helped me to open up the Zohar. I've been trying for years. I just felt that I had just failed. I just couldn't get it. And his work really enthused me, and I went back to the Zohar until the Zohar spoke to me. What does it mean the Zohar speaks? So the Zohar is, you know, um, and really all the books, they have their own voice. Writers talk about this, getting your own voice. And the Zohar, every book has its own voice, and the Zohar has its own voice. And until you really hear the voice of the Zohar, it's extremely difficult, to put this stuff together. And but once you hear the voice, you see the cadence, you see how this stuff is working. Uh, you know, then suddenly it all opens up. Once I was living in Israel. I took some time off, and we went and walked the Vadi. The Vadi is the area between I lived in Sfat and Miron, where the author of the Zohar is buried. And it's just kind of a wild area, and probably not now. Now it's probably all built up and stuff. But at that time, it's very beautiful, and you can, rock climb, but not in any kind of dangerous way. I mean, but just walking over these rocks and climbing these formations. And we got to this cave. One of the people had discovered this cave and decided, we dropped, rocks in it. You can tell how long it takes for the rock to fall. How far down it was. It was like maybe, I don't know, wherever, maybe 100 meters, I guess, something like that. Anyways, I was the lightest one, so they lowered me down into this cave. And it was like being on the moon, and you could hardly, in a cave, there's no straight planes. And if there's no straight planes, I mean, it makes it extremely easy to lose your your sense of where you are, where you came from, and where you are. And it's like being in a place where no one has ever been in before. And I don't know if that was true, but certainly for a very long time. And the thing about a cave is it can look like it's just, a cave, just a small cave, until you see a little opening. And you go into that opening, and it opens up into a huge cavern. And if you go too far inside the cavern, you will lose your sense of where you came from. And one could actually, get lost in these things, because I guess a lot of Israel is built on limestone. And limestone, it's an interesting stone because it burns when it, if you get it hot enough, it'll actually burn and melt. And if you put water through it for a long time, it will dissolve and make caverns. And oftentimes, you follow these caverns all the way down, I guess you would reach, to where there are the, the waters, in Hebrew they call them mayim chayim, uh, uh, living waters, living waters. And these are waters that never dry up. And this is our, I can't think of the word, what it is, but, that they exist underneath the crust of the earth. And these are, the purest waters in the world. And so, anyways, I don't even know why I was mentioning all this, and but what had to do with Sadhu Kohen. But anyways, I have this connection with him, and on this date, and also see 77. 7 plus 7 is 14, which is the gematria of Dovid. So that's why I decided to publish it. And usually it wouldn't matter. I publish my books and no one reads them, no one buys them. And it's kind of frustrating, but there is something in me which just pushes me to write book after book. And this book coming up, the book about the Zohar, this is like the ultimate book. And maybe I'll write more books after this. I'd like to, books I'd like to write, but this is the ultimate book, because this really does what I've been trying to do. And it's really extraordinary. And it's also extraordinary that someone laid some money on me so that I can actually hire a promoter, which I've done. And she's very high on the book, because the book does something no one could do for 700 years, which is unlock the mystical secrets of the Zohar. And the Zohar is known as the highest level of Torah. And it's known because it says in the Zohar that these words are meant for the end of days. And the Zohar is very difficult. For 700 years, no one could figure out the Zohar. And 700 years later, I mean, people ain't got smarter, they got dumber. And people learn less and rely upon, some sort of mechanical thing to sort of do the learning for them. And, in Torah, the commandment of studying the Torah is to study, certainly to study every day, every night. We're supposed to do that. But more than that, it's not like sort of how much you study or how much you accomplish, but it's how hard you try. And that's perhaps part of why the Torah is not so just forthcoming in the information once you dig for it. Dig for the Torah, because it's the effort that makes it yours. Otherwise, someone else telling you about it, you can take it, think about it, whatever. You didn't put the effort in, it's not really yours. It's just something that you heard about. So in this book, and one of the things I've done is I've gone to the trouble of like using a lot of Hebrew words, but transliterating them and translating them and transliterating them. In other words, so someone through this book, if they wanted to, could actually learn Hebrew, because Hebrew is a phonetic language, and each word sounds like each word, each letter sounds like its name. Like the Aleph is an ah sound, and the Bet is a B sound, and a Gimel is a G sound. So once you know the names of the 22 letters, then basically you know how to read. And so, I'm not trying to overwhelm the reader, but there's enough there that all 22 letters are used. And if a person wanted to, they could actually, and to a certain extent, because after a while, I just started using the words without the translation or the transliteration to help people actually read a word of Hebrew. Hebrew is a holy language, and if you can actually read a word and feel comfortable with it, then later in the book, when I come to translate the first 13 paragraphs of the Zohar, hopefully people who are not familiar with Hebrew will feel familiar with Hebrew. and I have really unlocked the secret of the Zohar, and I feel like I've really proved it, through this book. And I'm excited to get this information into the world. And so this last book, the Sex: A Metaphor to History, and this book, Zohar: Brilliance Beyond the Black Hole, are in a sense a pair. And one, Sex: A Metaphor to Life, is about how time is a spiral, and our time is the conclusion of the spiral. And that's why, and sex is a very similar thing, and there's always this male female dynamic going on through life, and just the dynamic of flesh loving flesh. And there's all these things that are happening. So we can see that also happening in history, where history has a very wide beginning, like a spiral that at its beginning is very wide. And in the spans of one cycle, things can happen that might have taken 1,000,000 cycles in our time. The greatness of our time, that we're moving very quickly, but really not going anywhere, because this is the end. And it's like the cave, where it's either the end and everything's going to end, or there's going to be the opening and it's going to open up into a big cavern. And that's what is happening. And that opening in that cavern is called 1,000 years of woman and 1,000 years of peace. And we see it just happening, like, particularly in the news, and so much of the news is about rectifying the difference between the rich and the poor, and the male and the female, and the minority and the majority. And it's interesting because, see, this is the way that Rome has taken control. Rome is very famous for divide and conquer. And it was the first thing that Bush said when he got up, and so we're going to do after 9/11, is going to be a crusade, and we're going to divide and conquer. And that's what they did. It was a crusade. They brought in a lot of sort of Christian people in their first invasion, trying to actually get people to be Christians. It was a crusade. A crusade not just against the Arab people, a crusade against, against Islam, against the Quran. And what did he do? He divided and conquered. There were a sectarian balance that he had, and he exasperated. I can't say the word. Exasperated. Yeah. Anyways, made it worse, until they were all fighting with each other. And that's what they do. They make every situation worse. The Israelis and the Palestinians, every situation, they make it worse. They build it up and build it up until the only way to peace, Rome has to come in and put down the law. That's kind of their way they do shit. And but all of this is really coming to an end, because we see that people are just tired. And we had this beautiful world. We fought these wars because we thought that we were in such danger. And we see there's no danger. There's no danger of communism sweeping the world and making everyone communists. And there's no worry that China is going to get so big and they're going to conquer everyone. We see what the world is. Everyone sees what the world is. And no one's really going to put up with this. And we don't really need all this weaponry, because it really doesn't do anything. Because everyone has so many weapons that everyone is so afraid to do anything. They could cause a, nuclear holocaust, God forbid. And more, as people really take control, and a lot of that has to do just with, the technology that allows everyone to know one another and speak to one another. and that now the governments, and to watch the government, to watch what these people do, and they're on the run at this point. And I have a lot of regard for China. I think they've done a great job in taking their country from just being just a starving pit of human despair into this wonderful country that And it's true, it doesn't have the kind of freedoms America has, but they don't really fit there. And there's no reason we should have to force everyone to be like us. America is a free democratic country because it's the only country in the world made up of, immigrants. The entire country is a country of immigrants. There wasn't a king, there wasn't anything here. And this is the greatest place for democracy to really flourish. But it doesn't mean that that's what the whole world has to be, because people have different natures, and countries and peoples. They have different natures, and they need a different way to deal with the government and the people. I remember when Trump first became president, that in South Korea was trying to mess around. They said to him, "Leave our democracy alone. We don't need America coming here telling us how to run it. We run our democracy what fits our people." And that should certainly be true for all peoples, that we all, uh, uh, have the right. I mean, that's true world democracy, that we have the right to live under different kinds of rules. Some people want to live under the rule of a king, or some people want the rule of a strong person, and that might not fit America's ideal. But we're just one country, and we need to really focus on our country, because if we can make our country, which is a country made of all countries, that to work in a way that's good for everybody equally, that doesn't give certain people, because they have money or power or some sort of stature, that they get to be on a whole nother level that's beyond the law, and that gets all sort of breaks, while everyone else to struggle. I mean, the whole thing, it doesn't work. I mean, there's good things that Rome has done. There's a lot of good things that technology has done, but there's a lot of bad that Rome has done, and we need to sort of end this Roman rule. We need to recognize it for what it is. And Rome also has their personality, and depicted as the pig, and the pig just always wants more and more, gets fatter and fatter, and this is what America has become, because we are the seat of Rome. And if we get Rome out of our country, if we force religion to pay on their property, pay taxes on their property, then that will greatly diminish their power. And their power is what is holding this country back, asking for draconian kind of laws that fit their really, dumb religion. I mean, there's no other way to say it. And it needs to be said, because we're all like propping up this lie, and we see it, with Trump, that how everyone's just propping up this lie, and we all see that it's a lie, and we should see the religion as a lie also, a bigger lie, and they've been saying it for a longer time, until they do the same. Trump does the same thing religion does. That the more that you say it, and the more you get other people to scream it and say it and presume, people think that it's real. I remember as a kid, a Jewish kid, growing up in San Francisco beneath the big cross, and the first thing that came on TV was the depictions in the Bible, which are just not true. And particularly Jesus, this Jewish rabbi who Rome decided is God, and nailed him to a cross and blamed the Jews for it. None of that is true. And it's just destroyed the Jewish people. And the unfortunate part is that the rabbis, who should be the ones standing up for the Jewish people and saying in our time when racism is being exposed, that they should have the balls to expose, the church as being just completely racist. And to say what we all know, that this story never happened and never could have happened. And if the church doesn't want to be labeled racist, then bring us some proof. In 2,000 years, there's not one shred of proof that that Jesus even lived. We only know that from the Quran. So certainly this story didn't happen. If you feel mocked, that's the mockingbird outside. They're very noisy. And they even they're in the middle of the night, I didn't know birds stayed awake in the middle of the night. But apparently mockingbirds do, and I always feel mocked when I hear them. Anyways, that's what these books are exposing. They're really exposing Rome, and they're also exposing the truth. I'm really proud of these books. I wish people would buy my books, and I'm certainly hoping that the promoter, she's very, very high on what I'm doing, and it's a big deal to have broken a code, a 700-year-old code that people 10 times smarter than me weren't able to break, and I broke it, and I can prove it, and I hope people will buy my book. And I hope people will talk about this, because it's a whole different perspective that goes to the very essence of our problem, which is the idea pushed really by religion and science that creation just happened. Whether one says that one science wants to say it's a big bang, or whether religion says God just did it. Both are inadequate. It makes God, to be something, not very friendly. God just did it, made all this big thing, and we're here. And science is even worse, perhaps, because it's just, it's that it has no meaning. It's just a big bang, and we just happened, and we'll stop happening, and none of that is true, but it really enters into the psyche of people. So my books really expose this fundamental lie about Rome that we're all living in. And if we open our eyes, we will stop, because it has no place in the human psyche. And everything they've told us is a lie, from the, naming the planets after their mythology, and the months, and the time in in years and centuries and millennium, according to another mythology based on a Jewish man who they say is God. And this has caused no end of difficulty for the Jewish people. We would be hundreds of millions by this time, instead of less than 20 million if it wasn't for this story. And we should all recognize that just like this story is a lie, their economy is a lie, what they think about life is a lie, their philosophies, their politics is certainly a lie. The whole thing is just one big fucking lie. And it's hard to get out of life if you don't know what the truth is. And my books bring the truth to the world. And I'm very proud of these books. And I invite you to read, to buy, which is available now, Sex, a Metaphor to History. And the one that's coming out, Zohar, Brilliance Beyond the Black Hole, that'll be out in the 17th of August, God willing. So there you got it. So I'll see you again someday at 420. I'm not trying to keep doing this 4 times a week, because it's just disheartening, if no one comes, So, Buy a book, make me feel better. Take a course, make me feel better. Anyways, I'll keep doing these, just probably more erratically. See you later.